as Larry. I don't remember her name. I'd never met her before.
Good morning. It's November 5th. We're here for our regular scheduled county commissioner meeting. We have all three commissioners present. We have our county administrator, Mr. Danzel, and our clerk of the board, Teresa. At this time, I'll call the meeting to order and ask everybody to please rise and join in the pledge. First item on the agenda is the approval of the current agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I would ask that we amend the agenda in front of us to add 2 executive sessions. The first executive session under, let me read it out here. So the first one for 30 minutes under RCW 4230-110-1B, real estate acquisition or site selection, and that one for 30 minutes. A second one under 4230-110-1I, potential litigation, and that one for 15 minutes. And with that, would move to approve the amended agenda.
Second.
Been a motion and a second for the approval of the agenda. We have executive sessions as needed listed, so we really don't need to change the agenda. We'll have 2 executive sessions as noted. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Moves on to public comment. Anybody in the room for public comment? Anybody on the phones? I don't see nobody coming forward in the room. Nobody on the phones. Move us down to consent agenda. We have 6 items on this consent agenda today.
Mr. Chairman, move for approval of the consent agenda, items 1 through 6 as presented.
Second.
Been a motion and a second for the approval of the 6 consent agenda items. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Regular business, Resolution 2025-329, amendment to Franklin County Overtime Management and Pre-Approval Policy, presented by Mr. Danzel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and this is actually rescinding a previous resolution that is 100% on me to blame. I had a couple of different iterations of what a overtime policy could look like, and then looking at it, I just determined that really the overtime policy that we were concerned with was those that directly report to us, and so that's what this change entails. I think if, just to kind of outline a couple of reasons why it's important: improve forecasting, preventing unauthorized spending. It'll get rid of some of the spikes in overtime. It'll give folks and managers the ability to fully understand what the approval of overtime means to the bottom line, because they'll have to be checking in on what their bottom line is. But again, I wanted to make this clear: the Board of Commissioners cannot mandate 2 separately elected officials how they run their overtime. And so this would just be a procedure for those directly reporting to myself or the Board of County Commissioners. With that, I would take any questions.
Question I have is, this overtime has to come from their budget, otherwise we do have a say in it.
Correct. Yeah, so if for example, if any department in the county, across the state, frankly, for that matter, has overspent a line item, overspent their overtime, then they would need to do a budget amendment or a transfer in. I prefer amendments.
Yes.
But the other thing to do too, and what we'll get to later on, I think that you'll really appreciate when we talk about the spending freeze or isolating key line items, is that you'll be able to have a very ongoing knowledge,
Yes.
real-time knowledge of what those line items say and what we've spent out of them. So I
Thank
hope
you.
I answered your question.
Questions, commissioners?
Yeah, no questions, just appreciate that.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I move for approval of Resolution 2025-329 as presented.
Second.
Been a motion and a second for Resolution 2025-329. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Next, we have presentation spending freeze presented by Mr. Tim Anderson.
And if I could preface this real quick.
Yes, please, Mr. Danzel.
And this will be part of my update too, but Tim, Jeff Burkhart, Ryan Brimacum, the three, I call them the three amigos. They always seem to come through in the clutch. And I think that you're going to really enjoy what you see here, but I think we're going to be able to achieve everything that you're looking to achieve with the spending freeze. And in a way, in a capacity that's not going to be organizationally and administratively burdensome, but we'll end up with the same end result. And then also, I wanted to say that this is in the middle, and I want to give a big thank you to Tim and everybody I just mentioned. This is in the middle of them getting ready for our next week's meeting revenue report, and also going over the final touches, as well as Council Briggs on our financial policies. So there's been a lot of work being done out of this division and out of these gentlemen, and I appreciate it greatly.
Thank you. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, sir. I actually have some printouts too that I'd like to bring up to you. Same information that's on here, just in case you
Thank you.
see it and you have something to reference as well.
Sure.
So as far as the non-salaries and benefits, because you've already got I believe, a spending freeze on salaries and benefits, so I think the focus is on the non-salaries and benefits. And so I think the first thing that just should be stated is how impactful some departments are versus others. You know, you have I think it was 20 departments in this all others category right there. You have 20 different departments in there that account for 9% of the current expense non-salaries and benefits line. It's really you've got the aid to other governments, the corrections, the sheriff, public defense that are really the heavy hitters that, you could have some of these smaller departments overspend 50% of their budget, and it's going to be at 50% of their non-salaries and benefits budget, and that's going to be like $15,000. So it's just not very. Those departments aren't very impactful to the overall budgets. On the salary side, they may be, and those are things that have already been addressed by a hiring freeze. But on the non-salaries and benefits side, there's not a whole lot in those. You've got some supplies and maybe a small amount of travel and things like that. But overall, they just don't have the impact as these big departments do. The proposal that we have is related to, so I have an example department. So for corrections, this is just an example department that we could do a spending freeze on, where you've got your other than personnel services category, where they have a $3.7 million budget. And then they've spent just over $3 million for the year, leaving $644,000 available. If we did what's being proposed today, you would end up having two separate categories. You'd have a much smaller other than personnel services category, which is on page 3 of your handout. So it goes from $3.7 million to $898,000 because we extract out $2.8 million that these 4 lines in the corrections department would be they would be a budget all on their own. There wouldn't be normally with the category bottom line budgets, you can overspend on one line within the other than personnel services as long as you underspend on another. Well, this would extract out the higher dollar line. So ultimately what the proposal today is going with lines that are $200,000 and above. And with that, there's 4 lines in corrections. So now you have, instead of having, you had 644,000 available after removing these. So these would be audited. These would be line item budgets to where you couldn't overspend these lines. And that would only leave $213,000 in the other than personnel services. And part of the thought process behind that is that I think when you have it all combined, the thought may be that you, as a department, you may think that you have a lot more cushion than you do. You may spend on certain things that you wouldn't otherwise because it looks like, oh wow, I've got $644,000 to spend when really you don't, because you've still got $455,000 that you've budgeted for the medical services. And so by pulling that out, you get a much better idea of how much real discretionary money you actually have. And so that's kind of the thought process behind it. The ultimately doing $200,000 and above on the last page, we would be segregating we'd be segregating 16 lines, and I kind of have it broken out to the side here. There's planning would have 1, public defense would have 3 lines, facilities 1, information services 1, sheriff 4, corrections 4, corrections food service 1, and security 1. So I did, as part of this, I did take out there was 2 departments that I removed from this analysis, which are they are some of the bigger ones. It's the aid to other governments and the non-departmental. These are really commissioner budgets. But for example, the aid to other government, they're mostly, it's payments to, you have juvenile payments to Benton County, you have Superior Court payments to Benton County. So not to say the board doesn't have any power over theirs, because you ultimately sign contracts for these, but they're generally pretty stable. This budget's generally pretty stable. We don't normally see a ton of fluctuation year to year as far as being under or overspent. It's not as, I would tend to say it's not as risky of a department once the budget is set. The budgets are, adopted based on approved contracts and stuff, and then, and so, it's just one of those that I think the risk is a little lower, and I think the board is more focused probably on the internal departments within the county. Non-departmental was another one that was extracted just because you have things like the insurance risk pool. It's things for the countywide, another commissioner department, but it has things like the risk pool that's ultimately we have a big payment at the beginning of the year and then get reimbursed by the departments throughout the county. And so ultimately by doing that, it ends up bringing that we'd have 16 departments that we would segregate separately. We'd create a separate category within the budget. There'd be OTPS segregated. Each of these would be a line by itself. And by doing this, we would cover 60% of the essentially the non-salary benefits minus not including the non-departmental and aid to other governments. But we'd cover 60% of kind of more the discretionary spending.
Tim, real quick, would you mind going back a page and showing in your pie graph where, and I think, again, I don't want to put words in your mouth, 9% all others. Tell me if I'm wrong. I understood that to mean that's about like 34 other departments. 34
It's,
other,
that one there is
budgets.
20, it's 20 departments.
20 departments.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they're listed down, down below.
All right. Yeah, that's right. It was started at number 36. I apologize.
And Tim, if I may, on your biggest piece of the pie, it's aid to other governments. That's what we're talking about, juvenile justice, or juvenile services and interlocal agreements. And you said we really don't have control over that, but I think we do. We all sit on those boards, and we've got to make sure that they're tending to their spending too. We can't do it in our action here because we can only have control over our courthouse, but we need to keep a tight lid on other interlocal agreements because they're getting out of hand too.
No, 100%. It's not to say you don't have control over them, because you do. You sign the contracts for these services and stuff. But as far as what we're doing, what we're talking about today, I mean, these contracts are set for what they are. And generally, they don't, the dollar amounts that we spend don't stray very far from the contracts that are set. And so there's not the variability that I think we see in a lot of the other departments.
Is
So-
there,
so-
is
oh,
there a
sorry.
printout list of the aid to other governments? Do we have a printout list of what those all include?
I mean, it's the aid to other governments it's one department within current expense that pays to. I mean, I can get you a printout of it, but it pays to juvenile services, Superior Court. It's to the fair. There's like
Ben
the health
Franklin-
district.
Ben Franklin Health District's in there?
Yes, there's probably 10 different things in there. Most of them, the two big ones are the juvenile and the Superior Court. Most of the others are relatively small.
Okay.
There's some administration fees to the human services as well in there.
Okay.
But this would give, I think doing something like this where we would segregate 16 lines would help to give a lot of control. It would gain some control of spending, I think, without making it extremely burdensome at the same time. And so I think you can accomplish what you want without making it too burdensome. And so, ultimately there would be, as I mentioned, I've got the departments listed off to the side here of the number of lines that would be segregated in these departments.
Questions, commissioners?
Couple of questions for you, Tim. Would you go to the pie chart? What's this separated from this for?
They are two different departments. The corrections is 101,540, corrections food services 101,550. So they're just they really are different I mean, they're ran by the same department head, but ultimately it's a different key in current expense.
Okay, will you go to the page with all the yellow lines on it? Is this because the risk pool changed mid-year? Is that why that we're beyond? Did they change our expense mid-year? Is that why that's so far over?
I think it made, I don't know that it was requested or requested an increase in the department process, within the budget process for the year. I'm not 100% positive on that, but ultimately I think there may be timing issues for when we get the amounts from WCRP, how much they're going to be the next year. And then there's calculations that have to happen on top of that, because, ultimately the commissioner's office bills to a bunch of different departments, including the sheriff's office. And so with that. Certainly, there's been increases every year. There's been, I think one of the years I saw total increases of like 20%, then another year was 18%. So we've had some really big increases, and there may have been an increase requested, but ultimately probably not, obviously not adequate to cover what there is.
I was just wondering, because I believe that we should know going into budget what our next year's expense is gonna be, and so just, yeah, wanted some clarity there.
I think I might have something on that, Commissioner. I believe you're right. We are in a stub year because of the risk pool. They wanted basically their budget cycle to mirror what the county's budget cycles are, which it hasn't historically been.
So they slid their cycle 6 months, I think.
That's right.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so-
I wondered about that, but I wasn't really sure, so thanks for that clarity.
If I could add a comment, Board? to
Yes,
this.
absolutely.
So my concern, and this is kind of echoing what Mr. Danzel discussed earlier on the overtime policy, is inclusion of the sheriff's office. There are ways to, curtail spending in elected offices, but I believe it'd have to be through a formal budget amendment. The remaining offices, I don't see an issue there. It's just specifically with the sheriff, because once the budget is adopted, those line item expenditures become within the discretion of the elected official. So the only way to get around that is to amend the budget, but I don't know if you can do it piecemeal with a budget freeze and then approve expenses on the fly. Certainly it can work in any other department that the board is directly controlling.
I hate to do this, but I disagree, but in a most polite manner. So I think that we can do a policy, and that the commissioner's oversight and implementation doesn't end when they pass a budget last year. So my way of looking at it is we could implement a freeze and a segregation of line items. But I would yield to probably some other experts, but
That is definitely what my understanding in all the reading that I've done is, that the oversight of this Board of County Commissioners does not end when a budget is passed. It remains.
And I think it's going to be particularly true after we pass our financial policies here in about 20 minutes.
One other thing I wanted to point out is, as you can see, and as Commissioner Baumann mentioned, he mentioned the one line. We have two lines that are over budget already currently. So I think if we went this route, one of the things that we'd have to do is, so here's one of the lines. I think we would need to transfer to this line to make it whole, because if we're budgeting these ones by line item, we don't ultimately want these ones to be over budget to start. I think how that can be done, it would be to transfer from the other than personal services category. So we could transfer 61,000 in here from one or more of these lines here. And so ultimately it would be a net effect of, you'd wind up having 152,000 that's actually available for spending in the other than personnel services category, instead of 213,000.
And the other part, we could transfer out whenever we please. And so I think that's the other part of it too, is like, if we decide that we want to transfer a certain amount out, we don't have to go through any kind of anything, do we?
We typically do the transfers like this, we would do through a resolution.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, but
Yes.
outside of that, I don't think we need any posting. I don't think we need an amendment. I don't think we need a,
No, it would just be a resolution, just a budget transfer through resolution, which could be, in my mind, could be done with the approval of this process. You could do these budget transfers at the same time.
so hypothetically, if the Board of County Commissioners was worried about unexpended funds towards the end of the year, could we do a transfer from those funds to a separate fund that we could hold them in until, you see what I'm saying?
I'm not sure I'm
We
following.
sweep all the funds into one fund, hold them, and then
Yeah.
allocate out
So
individually.
in other words, we can take a line item from whatever it is to zero at any time, right? And so can we, if there's unexpended line items, can we take those to zero and then put those funds in a reserve fund and then be able to utilize them at a later date?
Yes, I mean, yes, you certainly could. But my point as far as this though is we would have, if we're going line item on these segregated ones, we'd have something that's automatically negative, which would be, which we wouldn't want as far as audits go and stuff. And so I think we'd want to make that whole by transferring something from there, which could be from their other than personnel services category, which would give them less, discretionary spending left, but ultimately they would have had to come up with that anyway, without a board approval.
Yep.
Will you go back to the yellow lines, that one there? So looking at this one, this right here, the fuel consumed. So year to date, we're at 108,000. We're in November. I'm assuming that we lag roughly 30 to 60 days behind. In that projection, that line is going to be significantly below the budgeted 200,000. So could you speak to that about where are we at with this 108,000? Is that through October?
I don't have it right in front of me. I'd have to get that information for you.
So that was my question is too, when he says year-to-date actual, is that today, last week, last month?
It's through, I think it was through towards the end of October that I ran this specific thing that I imported in here. I think it was October 25th or so. I don't have an exact date.
So just the way that bills come in, it potentially could be September through the end of the year that remain to be paid out of this budget.
Yes, and some things lag more than others. I think I feel like the fuel one comes in pretty regularly, so I think it is only like a month behind, but I'd have to confirm that.
This is something I've said before, not necessarily to this, but I think that best practices would be that we have fuel for the entire county within one line, and then it's assigned out via individual cards the way that it is. I'd love to hear, not necessarily in this format, but love to hear people's position or opinion on that. Having done fuel quite a bit in the private world, it's pretty simple way to audit, and so just wonder if we couldn't be more efficient if we were to have everything within one pool and we can go buy blocks or truckloads of fuel, as it were. And the bigger the pile, the better the negotiation is. So just a little bit of a side note.
Mr. Danzel.
Yeah, my recommendation is to instruct myself and the auditor's office to get together a program that makes the most amount of sense to evaluate the most optimum amount of line items. And then from there, come back next week with a resolution for your passage. In exploring just the straight $500 spending freeze, I reached out to a lot of our contemporaries, and they said, you will like it for about 2 weeks, and then it'll be so overwhelming because almost everything nowadays costs more than $500. And honestly, and I wanted to point this out, I think the auditor's in the room too, so he'll probably appreciate this. But when you're making expenses, a lot of times you're wanting to make bulk expenses that would go over $500 because you do get the cost savings in terms. And especially if you can pay the terms within a certain amount of time. Anyway, long story short, I think what this does is it gets to what you gentlemen are looking for, so that we're not spending at the end of the year and waiting for some big transfer that's going to cause more of a problem for us balancing the budget. And I think it does it immediately if you instruct us to do this. And it seemed more like taking a scalpel approach rather than a shotgun approach.
Personally, I certainly don't want to make it more complicated. I'd love to, if you in the auditor's office, that I would be in favor of that.
I also would be in favor of that, bringing it back next week with your review and Commissioner Mullen.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Tim.
Could you scroll down on this one? I'm just reading down through here and of the different areas. Like this line here, we've expended 1/3. Is this a typical thing that we don't normally use this until the end of the year? Is that kind of a typical way that operates, or is this still co-combined with corrections?
It's not combined with corrections anymore, and I think it's just, I don't think there's necessarily a pattern to spending in that particular line.
I can speak to that a little bit. So the redesign of the new uniform and all that cost to like set up, even for their patchwork and their badging. But then the other part too is that, as you recall, we approved some hires for corrections. And so this was in anticipation of them being able to bring folks onto staff and being able to expend those funds. If you're talking about the uniforms.
Tim, a little bit further down there is the 911 CCOM 800 hertz user fees. That will be gone, correct? Because we're going to go to the new CCOM, but the user fees is going to go up, correct? With the new CCOM radios?
I was going to ask about that. You got that line, and then down a little bit below it.
I'm not sure where you're seeing that.
So
It's
scroll
sheriff.
down. That one right there.
It's 55,000. $42.24.
4224.
Down to the very bottom of the page.
Second from the bottom, right there.
You know, I'm not 100% positive on that. I'm not sure that that's going away or not. I defer to the departments on that.
I was having a similar question. So you got this line. So line 60, line 50, and then up here there's another one. Wondering about, trying to find it here.
I mean, those are good 2026 budget questions because I'm not 100% positive what it all is going to look like
Yeah,
at
this
this
one here,
point.
which is number 37, 50, and 60, I believe. Appear to sort of all say the same thing in a different way.
The 37 we've got, I mean, that is a transfer to which for this year, for 2026, is actually was increased to, it's like 1.1 or 1.2 million dollars is the request for 2026 budget for due to paying the approximate $1 million a year for getting into the microwave and radio project. So this amount is actually going up quite a lot.
So how about line 52?
Communications a lot of times is I mean, sometimes it's cell phones and stuff. I'd have to look at the detail. I don't have it in front of me as far as, that seems like it's high for cell phones, but yeah, I'm not positive right offhand.
Thank you for walking us through that. I would be in favor of what your recommendation was, is for you guys to get together and,
I think we have a consensus on that, so we'll look forward to that next meeting.
I have a quick question on some of these. So when you're saying percentage of actual coverage, because it's basically mid-October, I mean, you still have to add about 25% back onto,
It's based on the budget number, not actual. So the budget is generally static for the year.
so in the yellow section where you have the two overs and then go down below that, sheriff's equipment rental, no, wait, let me see. Budgeted for 112,000 and spent 207 so far, and it says 67.93% coverage, but would be overage.
So now that one, I do know on that one, it will come back down. It's similar somewhat to the county's insurance that we do. There's actually, they pay it in, with accounting, because accounting is, can be cumbersome at times. They pay it early in the year. I forget if it's March or June or something, but they pay it for a year, and part of the amount that they pay ends up being for the next year. And so we actually have to accrue it. We have to actually move that part that's for the next year to the next year. And so that number is actually, that $207,000 is going to drop. I don't know if it's going to drop to be under the 112,000, but I do know it's going to come down because we will be moving part of it to 2026.
So would that be the same instance in planning and building towards the bottom of that same page? Budget of 45,000 and year-to-date is 227,000?
No, they got, Wes had got some grants that were bigger and ultimately different amounts than what the previous director had input in the budget. And so ultimately just there's just been a lot more activity on that than what was originally planned. They're getting a lot more revenue and they have a lot more spending.
Okay. All right, thank you.
are you all the way at the bottom of that page?
I mean, my page goes further than what I printed out for you. I mean, it goes, I didn't print everything.
I'm just looking down through here at all the different line items that have a communications. Give me just 1 second here. So 585, 100,000, 68, 63, 55. I'm just in here. We're 1 3/4 million of numbers that are describing communications. I'd love to have a little bit more clarity on what those things are.
Maybe next week you can come back with that, because I'm sure it's going to be a little tough to bring that up to your memory bank right now.
How much are you seeing for, because I just
So
searched for just communications and I'm seeing
Added up, all of
And I'm
the,
seeing 155,000.
So the third line in our spreadsheet, it doesn't have the first number, but it's $1 million. The fifth line down is 585,000 for dispatch services. Then you have 100,000, 68, 65, 55. Like that third one down there, 911 CCOM tax remit. And then you go down two below that, then it's 585,000.
Mr. Chairman, I might jump in here and
Yes,
say.
please, Mr.
So many of these things that we're asking about, and I've given this a lot of thought and how we could reorganize as we move forward. We're trying to be fiscally responsible.
Yes.
And this is something I would need to broach with the auditor's office, of course, if they would be receptive to it. But what all this illustrates to me is the need for a budget analyst. Somebody that we can utilize to be able to answer probably more of those more granular questions. And they've got budget capacity the way I know they do. And so I think that might be something to look to the future that I'd love to be able to maybe brief you gentlemen on here in the next several days, and especially when we bring on a new human resources director, just to kind of get our eyes on the same piece of paper and maybe bring together some of these good potential steps, because I think that you could be able to have all your questions answered on every single thing. What these gentlemen do, these gentlemen wear about 17 different hats, and so it really is hard for them to be able to explain, the difference between $200,000 and $237,513.94. And I think a budget analyst would be able to explain exactly why. And then on the other flip side, it would accomplish something. The job that I would look at would be someone that could track these grant funding sources and understand when the life of the grant ends, so that we know what we're doing moving forward. So I would actually ask if you could empower me after this to maybe work with the auditor, and in between departments, they've got capacity and then some to be able to do this. And I don't even know if they'd be open to it, but I think that this is, most places have a deputy county administrator, or they have a budget analyst, they have some sort of person that would be able to really dig deep into those sorts of questions you might have. And Tim, I'm sure that you'd be open to that.
Yes, sir.
Just one other question. Mr. Bauman brought up the dispatch services, Franklin County's portion. It says working annual budget of $585,000, year-to-date is $436,000 with a 39.63% coverage. So that percentage on paper doesn't look even remotely close.
No, these percentages off to the side are the coverage. It's a cumulative percentage that adds up. It's the coverage that we would get by segregating these. So you see the amount goes up on each one because it's adding in the next row into it. So when you get down to the bottom, if you did everything, you'd have 100% coverage.
Okay.
Because it's the amount of, it's the dollar coverage that we'd get by segregating these lines.
I'm really happy you explained that. That helps a whole lot, because it wasn't working. I was trying to make it work and it wasn't.
Okay. No, thank you.
And before we get out of here, if I might ask too, Mr. Danzel, that maybe compile our fuel, how much we're spending in the county for fuel, and if we were to go to a subtype of dispense for our county vehicles, including the sheriff and everybody, we could probably talk to a fuel company on savings of buying it in bulk and having, because I think we have tanks out in our yard, don't we? Do we not?
Yeah, and here's what I would ask from you gentlemen. Just direct me to go out to bid for fuel. And once that happens, we'll do it.
I think there's a couple of different ways we could approach it. We could physically buy in bulk, or we could go and bid out services to the various competitors. At least three, very reputable large firms locally that go, have them bid on our services.
And I got to be honest with you, there's timing in this too. I have historically bought our bulk fuel in December and bought the best price in December on our fuel for the farm.
Very good.
Historically, for the last decade or so.
Yeah, and so if you guys are done with Mr. Anderson, what I would recommend is adding an item and then delegating me to do that.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
Can I real quick?
Absolutely.
Again, Mr. Anderson, Mr. Burkhart, Mr. Brimacum, Ms. Gomez, Raul, Tommy, Ray, all the folks that have been participating and helping put together some of this information and keeping us on the up and up on the financial enterprise doesn't go unnoticed. I think they deserve a huge kudos. And I haven't had one single problem. As a matter of fact, I want to tell a story. Rosa had originally done an audit of one of my paychecks, and it was in between when I was an interim and when I was the full-on county administrator. And I think a lot of people thought that she was going to be in trouble because she refused payment because our contract had expired and we needed to do a new contract. I went in and thanked her. I said, that's just exactly the kind of people we need that'll have the highest level of scrutiny applied to people across the board. So you got a good outfit there. And I'd feel remiss to not say that.
And I would say, I think they're all a direct reflection of their leader, Mr. Beaton. He does an incredible job. That's a great department in our courthouse.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I too want to say thank you for all the hard work that has been very evident as we've been talking about how do we tighten our belt in Franklin County and do our best to not get to the point where other counties already are at, you know, furloughs, layoffs, that kind of stuff. And I think that my fellow commissioners would agree with this, that we are doing everything that we can possibly do to not get to that point in Franklin County. And I think the exercise we just went through and some of the stuff that we're probably going to do here shortly is going to be further work on that. And so thank you for your hard work and helping dive deep into these things, and let's continue the hard work.
Mr. Danzel?
Mr. Chairman, would you like, we could have something on the books available next week
Yes.
as part of our consent agenda?
We had a consensus amongst, we all said yes for you to get with the auditor department, put this together and bring it back next week. Is that what you're saying?
We need a motion, and I think we
Oh,
should.
for the fuel?
I've got two motions prepared
Okay.
based on what
So we need
we've
to
been talking
amend
about.
the agenda and then make the motions.
Thank you, Tim.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we amend the agenda under regular business to add 2 potential action items.
Second?
Been a motion and a second to amend the agenda for 2 action items under regular business. All in favor, say aye.
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 So, Mr. Chairman, I move that we instruct our administrator to report back on how he and the auditor's office best believes we can address the potential of a budget freeze and how that their recommendation would be that we handle that.
Second?
Been a motion and a second for our administrator to join ranks with the auditor's office on our spending freeze. Clarification. All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I also move that we instruct our administrator to report back on fueling options for Franklin County and how that he is able to find information that we might address that concern.
Second?
Been a motion and a second for our administrator to look into fueling options for the county for savings with price quotes. All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you. All right, that moves us down to public hearing. Resolution 2025-330, Franklin County Fiscal Policies, presented by Mr. Danzel, Administrator. And at this time, I'll open the public hearing. Mr. Danzel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate the ability to speak to this for just a little bit. One of the things I noticed that didn't get a ton of press, although I'm having a meeting on it tomorrow with Apple Valley News, but for the first time in a very long time, we had a clean audit. And that's something we're celebrating. And so these financial policies, as you well know, is, that's what their intention is to continue to give us clean audits and ensure accountability and control, standardize operations. This particular document creates a uniform, reliable guide for all department heads and elected officials in discharging their financial duties. It moves us away from fragmented and sort of like ad hoc policies that didn't really yield the best result, and in fact yielded lack of internal controls in certain circumstances. And it moves us toward a unified system, which is the bedrock of good governance, right? It strengthens our internal controls, the policies establishing clear roles and segregation duties in the critical areas like cash receipting, which is found in section 13 of the policy, or accounts receivable in section 23, payroll processing in section 39. This significantly reduces the error of fraud and mismanagement. It puts a good, hardy process in place that's withstood the scrutiny of many, many people. And when I get to the bottom of this, I got another thank you list. Responsible debt management, the policy strictly prohibits using deficit financing to support ongoing operations, calls for a reserve fund. So this gets us away from having to be in a reactive position, and instead we're in a proactive position. Maintaining regulatory compliance and transparency. The procedures explicitly align our practices with Washington State Bar's reporting and accounting system and relevant revised codes of Washington, which is vital to ensuring favorable annual audits and avoiding penalties like we just experienced. So this is just another step in the right direction. It helps with comprehensive financial reporting. The commitment to full disclosure in all financial reports and requirement for timely annual reports increases transparency for the board, our citizens, and oversight bodies. And I can tell you that when we get to the annual report, the auditor's office, they let you know about it. They know, hey, this is important. We got to get this done. This is what we base a lot of our future decisions off of. So, good governance, grant management integrity, new rules on federal and state funding. Ensure that we analyze true local costs of grants before acceptance and enforce strict compliance with federal cost principles, preventing costly audit findings. This is a great part of our policy because the grants have changed. It used to be grants in the state of Washington, they would let them out before they knew that you could fully implement them or fully afford them even. And so there was a huge case in the 1990s and early 2000s where you saw a lot of people that would send money back to the state of Washington, and it became an embarrassment to them. I think this is a good step in the right direction and something that they've actually made part of their nomenclature at the state auditor's office. It promotes strategic and sustainable planning, and responsible, and this is maybe the most important, responsible budget philosophy and operating policy mandates that current expenditures be paid, and this is in section 4 of this, expenditures be paid with our current revenues with a clear goal of no year-end operating deficits like we are not allowed to have. It also prioritizes investments that reduce future operating costs such as technology utilization. Disciplined capital investment by requiring a comprehensive 6-year capital improvement plan and mandating that capital projects will not be budgeted without an available revenue source. We ensure our capital spending is strategic, well-funded, and coordinated with operating needs. This is something that we've already kind of started in a certain way with Mr. McCart, and but this puts it into, it codifies it. It puts it into actual policy. And effective resource prioritization, clear guidelines on budget adjustments, which is found in section 3, transfers, and the necessity of supplemental appropriations help the board maintain control over resource allocation, and funds are spent and intended throughout the entire fiscal year. Because, yeah, you know, just because you pass a budget on December 5th doesn't mean that's the end of you guys having any say in the budget. Right. You're supposed to be able to adapt and react. I'm proud of the process that we went through. This has been sent out to everybody. It's been vetted by a very competent team of people, including the treasurer's office. I got to give a shout out to Russ Stewart and Treasurer Kelzer. I've got to also give a shout out to Auditor Beaton and his staff, Jeff Burkhardt, Tim Anderson, Ryan Brimacum, a host of others. I got to give a big shout out to Council Briggs for keeping us online and telling us where we're overlapping with other policies. did a fine job of that. And so what you have before you is finally a well-vetted financial policy that you can be proud of, that calls for a reserve fund and to be able to put enough funds aside to meet that reserve fund, so that we don't have to have a lot of the conversations that some of the less fortunate municipalities are having, in that folks just kept spending even though revenues were coming in short. I think our hiring freeze helped. It'd be my recommendation to the Board of Commissioners to not only pass this, but pass this enthusiastically. Thank you very much. I'd be willing to answer any questions.
Questions, commissioners?
No, I just want to say thank you for all your hard work, and it's a breath of fresh air. Thank you.
Where is the reserve fund set at? What kind of funds are we looking at? 7 million, 8 million? What would we ultimately like to achieve in the reserve fund?
Well, I think, Tim, and you remind me, I think the first goal is 1.4. Is that about accurate?
So we have levels here that we're going to try to achieve?
Yes, the amount that was set for the 2026 budget was to transfer 1.4, I do believe.
Yeah.
But the ultimate, I mean, to be fully funded with an amount, because the policy breaks it up within current expense and in the reserve, in the actual reserve fund. And between the two components, it's actually like I want to say right around $11 million is what it dictates.
Good. That's excellent.
So I believe best practices say that you need to have between 16 and 17%. Is that what that gets to roughly?
I think we actually went a little bit higher than that. I can't remember. It may have even been 25. I can't remember exactly, but we went through a part of the process. We went through a checklist from the Government Finance Officers Association that kind of rates you based on different criteria, and based on that, we chose a slightly higher threshold.
Now we just got to achieve it.
A lot of hard work ahead.
Yes.
That's exactly right.
So any other comments, questions, commissioners? This is a public hearing, so is there anybody from the public that would like to weigh in on this? Anybody on the phone? Seeing nobody come forward, commissioners, if no other comments, questions, I'd entertain a motion.
Move to approve Resolution 2025-330.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second for Resolution 2025-330. Any other comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. I now close the public hearing. Move down to Commissioner Administrator updates. Mr. Danzel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would be remiss also if I didn't shout out the fine folks and the ladies at the election center for putting on an election last night. That's not easy. It's a lot of work, and it's a lot of work that's can be tedious, and also it can be a lot of work of waiting around and then finally doing something. So I just wanted to compliment your staff, Auditor Beaton, on the fine work they did. They were one of the earliest reporting counties. Everybody kind of knew immediately what had taken place. So well-run shop over there. I had a busy week. I attended the Shoreline Reconveyance meeting twice. There was one previously that kind of dealt with the interest of the Big Five, and then we also met with the tribal nation of Yakima and the Umatillas. There's nothing really that came out of that. Frankly, it was more of a punt down till the end, beginning of next year. So in January, they look to meet again. Met with the accounting division within the auditor's office to discuss and prepare what was presented to you today, to discuss the financial policies, and to discuss the enterprise fleet management program. I met with Laura Clark from Enterprise and the accounting staff and the auditor's division to talk to Laura about having a workshop here next week to discuss a kind of an out-of-the-box idea of how we can do a couple of things. We can shrink the size of our fleet. We can have equity within a couple of years on the rigs that we are bringing in. and we can get rid of these vehicles before they're needing major changes like tires and batteries, and you get out of them before you even hit the 50,000 mile mark while you'll still have equity. And the reason that's possible is because of their volume discount purchasing. And then also they get huge rebates because they know that they're working with the government. So for example, Dodge was having about an $8,000 rebate. So in addition to their volume purchasing and the $8,000 rebate, by year 3, we would have equity in that vehicle and could turn loose of it and get a brand new vehicle. This saved some counties in California in the past. I did a lot of research on this. When they were running out of the ability to pay for anything and times got tough and shared revenues went away from the state of California, they were able to save their entire motor pool because of this. I think it would be at least worth your gentleman's while to have them come and present. I think you might be pretty intrigued to understand how many rigs we have. For the folks that are wondering in the county why I asked for odometers and VINs, it was for that purpose. But we've got some vehicles that I think that you should know about that are, even some of them are within 2, 3, 4 years in model years, and we've got like 2,000 miles on them total. And so my recommendation to the,
Quick,
go ahead.
to make sure I understood what you just said. We have 3-year-old vehicles that have 2,000 miles.
Total. And so kind of the idea was, what we explained to Enterprise is that we would like to see a program of a reduction in an actual motor pool. And this is not going to set well with everybody. I just want to give you a heads up on this. I include my vehicle that you gentlemen let me use in this. But the way that it works most places is you have, a checkout system. You have a reservation and checkout system that if you know that you or a couple people of your department are going to need vehicles, that you check it out, everybody knows about it, you do it enough in advance that if you're going to a convention or whatever it might be, or if you have a recurring need for the vehicle, that's even acceptable. You could do that. That makes sense. We know people that need to be out and about more often than others. But I throw myself in that. I kind of never understood why I had a vehicle kind of just segregated for me. I'm not too good to go and check out a vehicle just like everyone else. And I think that we're really going to, if you're looking at expenses and not having to lay people off, and in a way that we could do this in a financially prudent way, moving, not just now, but moving forward, I think that this would be something that'd be worth your while. So I had scheduled that for next week's workshop, and we went over a couple of just example counties and what had happened there. It's not completely fully vetted. I need to make some other phone calls. I'm not asking you to make a decision when can't even really during a workshop, but I think it's worth your while hearing it. So I had a meeting with Laura Clark on that. I met with Director McCart, met with Director Beckley. Director Beckley has created a leave program for direct reports to the county administrator or county commissioners program. That's going to be really pretty state-of-the-art, so we'll be able to track that better. Met with Gray, Republican Public Records, regarding public records. I'm trying to establish all these meetings so that I can understand better, week in and week out, what might possibly be some of the issues that pop up. Met with Mike McCall at HAPO, had a good discussion on both the transfer that took place earlier today and then future operations. I, of course, met with each commissioner to go over the agenda, met with the treasurer's office regarding tax title properties. We attended a second shoreline reconveyance meeting, met with Director Erdman just to discuss life in general, but also I feel like I get good advice from Director Erdman, and that it's a good idea to exchange information like the day before that we might have a public hearing so that I might fully better understand and that I might be able to say, hey, this is some of the questions that I'm hearing. So I thought that went extraordinarily well. Met and checked in with the Department of Commerce regarding our HVAC grant. And then late yesterday, I met with Pasco City Administrator Harold Stewart. We had a wonderful conversation to answer a couple of things. Our jail ILA is on their workshop. And Commissioner Bauman, the city administrator, was amenable to some of the requests that we were talking about getting together and seeing how we can best work together on certain issues that you had asked me to ask him, and he was all for it. So that is my report. If there's anything else you gentlemen would like me to be working on, just let me know.
Thank you. Commissioner Bauman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Multiple phone calls over the last several weeks about roads in our county. A couple of them thanking us for the new section of roadway on Glade, and so from Clark Road into the city limits, and so that has been very well received. And then a couple of different comments about the Taylor Flats Clark Road intersection, and I know we've talked about that a lot of times, and it's still not any better, and really don't know what we do about it. It's not really our intersection anymore. We do have, we do touch the intersection, but it's mostly surrounded by the city now, and so not sure what we do about that. But just several people have noticed that this board has said that the roads in Franklin County are a priority for us, and are thankful for that, and so. Yeah, I'm excited that we're making the roads in Franklin County a priority, and I'm excited to see the where we go from there. I believe historically, the most maintenance we've ever done in 1 year was 112 miles of chip seal and up maintenance. Is that pretty close-ish? So that's I'm excited that we're making that a priority. Had a constituent out in the county concerned about a cease and desist that they received from the Washington Department of Transportation about a sign that they had on private property affixed to a trailer that was within sight of 395. And so I've talked to Director McCart about that, and trying to look into that and see what the options are there. Shrub Step Habitat meeting about the Fish and Wildlife's leaning into the Shrub Step Habitat. They have a no net loss, and they've been putting some criteria on Shrub Step Habitat where that they want a 2-to-1 exchange rate. If you take out shrub step habitat, that you have to replace it with 2 times what you take out, and so trying to learn about that. So there's lots of different people in all of our local jurisdictions working on that. Was asked to weigh in on I think it's 4 or 5 meetings. The governor's office reached out and ask for me to sit in on some meetings about land banking that has to do with low-income housing. I asked Director McCart to be there with me and look into that. So we've had one of those meetings, and there'll be a few more as we learn about that. Had a meeting with the CEO and the regional planner for Ben Franklin Transit, along with another director there, just talking about 2026, some of the priorities and where we're headed there. Wasac Virtual Assembly, PA's office meeting, weekly meeting with them, agenda meeting with our administrator, various other calls and meetings, impromptu, and wondered if we could get an update on where we're at with the HVAC project on the Hapo Center. And then just been really reflective after the election yesterday, and it's really sad. New York just elected a foreign-born socialist communist to run the largest city in the United States, and that is a profoundly sad thing. Socialism and communism has never worked, never once, and everybody's reason for this for trying this utopian idea is that the last guy didn't quite have it right. They need to tweak it a little bit. To give you an example, Venezuela in 2009 was the fourth most prosperous country on the face of planet Earth. And today, Venezuela are killing each other in the streets for food. And that is profoundly sad. Cuba was an extraordinarily wealthy country when the Castro brothers took over, and it is a poverty-stricken country that starves their citizens today. And now, apparently, socialism and communism has come to the U.S., into New York City, and that is very sad. I think it was President Reagan that said something to the effect of, "Those that forget history are destined to repeat it." He said it much more eloquently than that, and I think that we need to be very aware of that. I think that that's a very sad thing, and we get to watch it firsthand because Mamdani was elected as the mayor of New York City. So with that, Mr. Chairman, that'll be my report.
Commissioner Mullen.
Okay, so had my meeting with Brian Danzel, the county administrator. Just want to announce that the health department's having a special meeting today on fee adjustments, and if you like to voice your opinion, to call in during the public comment section of the meeting. Had the privilege last week to do the auction for the Washington State Fair Association fundraiser. I just think that's a very good cause that keeps our youth in the county active and teaches them responsibilities. And also I'm going to do the veterans auction this Saturday up in Kettle Falls for their fundraiser. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Mullen. Now, on that Board of Health, I've looked over the agenda and there is no comment period, but as chairman, it's your duty to make sure there's a comment period before we get into the agenda. And I think there needs to be people phoning in because the health department is supposed to be doing this for the good of the community. And now for the HIV and diseases that they want to check for, they're going to start imposing a fee. And I'd have to equate this to like garbage pickup. When the fees get too high, people just start throwing their garbage out on the road. People will not come in and get checked. This is supposed to be a health need for the community, and therefore, I don't know why we're imposing fees for people who can't afford them. That's what the health department's there for. So I have some very good concerns about this meeting, and I would love for that comment period to be opened up for the public. My week consisted of the agenda meeting with Mr. Danzel, and I got to thank him for that. Pullouts, again, I got to emphasize for the roads. Yesterday, heading home from being here at the courthouse, I had almost 2 head-ons in a row because there was carts that were being pulled up the road with the pullout right there. And I talked to a neighbor of mine up at Basin City, and he says, even if you have these pullouts, they still won't leave the road. And I said, yes, they will, because they will get ticketed by the sheriff if they don't. 2 cars pulled out to pass these carts, and I'm coming right at them. I had to slow down and get off the road to let them go by. It's getting crazy out there. We've got to do something to make these roadways safe, especially 68 and Glade Road. Then I'd like to say that I want to congratulate my good friend, Donald Landsman, who won the election last night, but he passed away. And it's a sign that even Richland isn't going woke, that he was a constitutionalist, red-blooded American that loves the Constitution, almost 60% of the vote, and he passed away 3-4 weeks ago. It's a good sign because the Republican Party will now get to pick 3 candidates to replace him instead of the leftist that was running against him. So this is good news for our area. And it's too bad Donnie wasn't here to celebrate his win. I'm sure he's celebrating up in heaven right now. That's the end of my report. And if with that, we'll move down to public comment. Is there anybody for public comment?
George Dockstetter, Self Landing Road. I want to congratulate Public Works on the job they're doing on Glade. I would love to see that finished all the way to the county line so that people out there can move heavy equipment during the winter time. It's a long ways to go, but it's been a long time getting started, and I would love to see that continued. Other thing is, I agree with Commissioner Bauman. Douglas Fruit Interchange is a complete disaster. It doesn't matter if you're in a car or a truck or a set of doubles pulling apples. It's a mess trying to get on and off. I realize we can't do anything about it without the city, but I urge you guys to start talking to the city about that intersection. It is a disaster. I'm just surprised that somebody hasn't been killed there. And I think the only reason that is because most people realize how bad it is and they slow down. Third thing is it's great you're talking about spending freeze and all that stuff right now with the budget hole we're in, but the problem is the year's over. It's a little late. Why didn't you guys start talking about this in January and February when you knew our asses were in a hole, instead of waiting until now? Between Thanksgiving and Christmas, there's nothing left. And the fourth thing I want to talk about, I know you're going into executive session on real estate. I hope you have a better advisor on your real estate acquisition or sell than we did last time when we got screwed behind that coroner's building.
Thank you. Anybody else for public comment? Anybody on the phone? That takes us down to executive session. I believe we have two that we need, so if you might call them out.
It sounds like
Mr.
Commissioner
Briggs?
Bauman already called, but yes, the first would be under RCW 4230 110-1B for 30 minutes. Who does the board want present for that one?
The board, our administrator, legal counsel, and our clerk.
Okay. And then the other one, RCW 4230 110-1I for 15 minutes. So council would be required for that one, so we'll just stay. For
So I'd like to amend the first one and ask our Mr. McCart, our director, and Mr. Erdman, our engineer and public works director, to be in that one as well.
Okay.
Okay, and we're going to stay right here because we're going to shut the cameras off. If you want to start that process right now. So at this time, oh, the clock is already off. We'll recess into executive session at 11:18. Oh, 10:17. Oh, it's an hour off. I got you. Okay.
10:47?
Yes.
We're coming out at 10:47.
Yes. Are we set up to be down there at 11?
Okay, we're live.
We have come out of the executive session, and we're going to recess back for another 5 minutes. Same RCW. We're out of executive session, and we are now going to recess in for the second executive session for 15 minutes. Under the RCW, Mr. Briggs of
4230, 110, 1I.
paved road. We've come out of executive session. We need to recess for another 10 minutes under the same RCW, and we'll recess at 12:07. We'll be out at, or 11:07. We'll be out at 11:17. Okay, we've come out of executive session with no decisions being made. Is there any other business for the good of the county? Hearing none, this meeting is adjourned.